16th at 5:37, and this is the Farmers Market Advisory Commission for the City of Ann Arbor. So agenda item A, call to order. We'll call to order. And so item B, roll call. Stephanie.
All right. Peter Wolf.
Here.
Jeff Nemeth. I see you. I can't hear you. All right. Lisa Young.
I'm here.
Stephanie Willette.
Here.
I think Holly has not yet joined us. She may continue to join later, but otherwise, that's 4 of you. All right.
All right. So item C, approval of agenda. You should all have the agenda for today as to where we were. Do we have a move to any changes or discussion about the current agenda first before we move to approve? Do we have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? No one's opposed. All right, item D, first public commentary. This is 3 minutes per speaker, limited to agenda items only.
Let's see if anyone is raising their hand. I only see that's just one in CTN. I will say though, I was given a commentary that a vendor wanted to share, but I do see a hand. Hold on one moment. Hello, Carlene, are you there? You need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Carlene. If you're going to read that commentary, that would be fine.
Okay. Or if you wanted to add something, you can too.
No, I just wanted it read because anybody who is joining the meeting from a telephone can't see any posts or anything. So I wanted them to be able to hear it too.
Yep.
Okay.
And I was gonna start with Debbie's because it's a little bit shorter and there's more stuff in there, and then I'll do
okay.
yours.
All right.
Thanks. All right. And I see Holly has joined us in the interim. So hello. We have a full house. We're in the process of the first public comment, and we had one of the vendors submit a letter because they have technology barriers that they could not be here themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and read that letter. And I also have another letter that Carlene submitted as well. Just give me 1 second to pull that up. And this is from Debbie Marks, who is an artisan. All right, she says, my name is Debbie Marks. I've been a vendor at the Ann Arbor Farmers Market for 30 years. The bathroom situation is horrid and needs to be finished immediately. The whole market needs power washing, hasn't been done in over a year. We need in-person meetings. And all these things, all these phrases do have exclamation points. So I'm trying to reflect that in my reading of it. The early stall assignment is great only when seniority is honored 100% and the process is total transparency. Knowing ahead of time your stall and parking is great. If we tried it for a year, then voted in, that would be great. No rule changes until we have in-person meetings. Thank you. That was the conclusion of her comment. And then the second one is a little bit longer. This is Carlene's letter. I will read that for you all. And this is, the other one was a little bit more multiple topics, but this is specifically about the discussion about the sign-in process changes. Okay, dear Commissioner, upon reading the proposed changes to the public market operating rules, I have some concerns and suggestions. In part 3, a vendor who arrives without signing in should not be able to displace another vendor who has already been assigned a stall. As in the past, if you are late or have not notified the market master of your intention to come to market, you should be required to set up in a stall that remains available. If the purpose of the change is to let vendors know ahead of time where they will be, there should not be a chance that this changes when you arrive. It is also important that the stall assignment process is transparent. All annual producer vendors should be able to have 3 stalls before any daily vendor gets stalls. Vendors who have to move each week should be those at the bottom of the seniority list. The proposed parking regulations do not seem right at all, so I've suggested the following parking regulations. No matter who or how new the vendor, they should not be required to set up in a stall with parking where another vendor is parking. It makes it difficult for them to unload and limits their storage of extra inventory. Therefore, I'm suggesting that the parking regulations be written as follows. A, parking spaces assigned to annual vendors shall be allotted at the same time annual stalls are assigned. B, daily vendors and daily mobile food vendors shall be assigned parking spaces as available on any given market day. If an annual vendor is assigned a stall that does not have a parking space, they may be assigned a parking space that is not in a stall. Otherwise, they will be required to park in empty stalls assigned by the market master if available. In the event that no empty stalls are available, the vendor will need to locate parking in one of the public parking areas in the city. C, all parking spaces that are adjacent to market stall shall be assigned to the same vendor who is set up in that stall, unless the vendor wants to relinquish their right to the parking for that day. Parking fees shall be charged for all vendors parking within the market lot. They will be charged at the current daily rate unless the vendor has paid for the parking on an annual basis. D, parking disputes that cannot be resolved between the market master and vendor should be appealed to the community services administrator as described in 6 part 2 or V1 in the Roman numeral. Thank you for considering my concerns. Respectfully submitted, Carlene Goetz Greenhouse, LLC. And that is the conclusion of that letter. Is there anyone else that would like to participate in the public commentary? First round. I am not seeing any other hands raised, so we can move on.
All right. So then we'll move on to item E, approval of previous meeting minutes. So if those were online, we had a chance to quickly review those on the screen here, but they're from June 17th. So it's been quite a while. So in reviewing those, any comments, changes, corrections people have for those? Is there a motion to approve?
Approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. All right. Item G, regular business. Particularly part 1, market personnel update. Stephanie.
Okay. So as you had known before, we had a new assistant manager that ended up having to leave because she got a fellowship in Alaska. So that was pretty abrupt. And how we pivoted as quickly as possible was that the person who was previously the market intern is now the assistant manager who has taken the place of the person that left, Liz Leonard, and went to Alaska. So it did take a little while to actually get her officially hired just because of some personnel shifting and stuff within the hiring HR department. But she is now officially a real employee. So that is a positive. We also have a candidate lined up to replace Becky Locke's position, which is assistant manager as well as outreach coordinator. So it's sort of second tier above the other staff person I just discussed. And they will likely start in November. We're trying to time it so that they're 10 months on, 2 months off, as mandated by city hiring requirements, does not fall in a time next year where we will also leave ourselves short-staffed like we are now. So that is sort of the delay on that, but we have a person completely lined up on board And I believe at this point, we're going to try to get them to start in the beginning of November. So, and I'm not sure if I should tell their name yet in a public forum until they are officially hired. But they are a great person. Many of the vendors know them already due to their current role in the local food system, is what I will say.
Great. So part 2, general market updates.
All right. Debbie touched on this already in her letter, but the bathroom obviously continues to be a thorn in everybody's side, but we are very, very, very close to reopening. There was the plumbing inspection that happened yesterday. There was an additional inspection today. I'm not sure. It might have been structural. I'm not sure. And then there's one final inspection that has not yet been scheduled, or it wasn't as of Tuesday. And that's the electricity or electrical inspection. And once that inspection is completed, the bathrooms will reopen. So we're very close. Everything's operational. We're just waiting for the green light in terms of those inspections. So again, they had said August. Obviously, it's September 16th. So whoever had predicted in the summer that it would actually be September, yes, they were correct, unfortunately. But the good news is that they will be fully ADA compliant. That includes there will be automatic opener, so you can just press a button and it opens the door for you. The changing stations will be returning. The only thing that's a little different is, especially in the women's bathroom, they had to reorient things. So the sinks are a little bit smaller than they were previously, but otherwise, very, very similar setup. There's a nice gray tile in there. The doors have been painted, the walls have been painted. So again, we're literally just waiting on the final inspection to be able to reopen. It's hard to say when that will be because they need to wait for the electrician to be present. And if it's the same people they had used before, they are not local. They live in Fenton. So that is potentially a pause on that, but I will let everybody know as soon as it is open. So that's a big positive. And then we need to make a decision about that because obviously the vendors will be able to use them. But given the Delta variant, I do not feel comfortable as of yet allowing the public to use those facilities. I don't think that's intelligent because then it would come with another need to regulate mask compliance inside that area because as you all may know, City of Ann Arbor requires masks indoors in all facilities. And I just don't think it's the best call yet to open it immediately to the public. So in that case, we will probably maintain the portable restrooms for their benefit, but we need to reevaluate that, especially as it gets colder. But for right now, I think it's best for everybody's safety, specifically market staff and vendors, to keep the public out of our bathroom space once they are opened.
Do you hazard a guess of when it actually might be open, or do you have any your crystal ball have any insights there?
It's seriously just as soon as the electrician comes and that inspection is done, it's open the next day, is what I've been told by park operations. So it could be next week, could be 2 weeks, but should be very, very soon.
The update, that's encouraging for sure. I do want to, I think maybe just question the idea of not opening to the public. I worry about the reliance on porta potties for folks who can't access the facilities through porta potties. And so I hear your concern. Of course, we're all concerned about the Delta variant. But if masks are required in the market anyway, it seems like they're not required in the market.
No, just indoors.
I guess I wonder about porta potties as the only option for people coming to market. It just seems like that's still leaves out a subset of customers that, I don't know, I'm concerned about that. And I wonder, I know that that was one of the issues that was raised in the email that I saw, that the porta potties, of course, are not accessible. And they're also, it sounds like, not very clean, which, porta potties are never all that appealing. But so I just wondered if any of the other commissioners are also concerned about the accessibility issue in particular.
Yeah, just to clarify, in terms of the porta potties, one of them is handicap accessible. And we do also have Carytown option. So it's not like, porta potty or nothing. There is a full service bathroom inside of Sweetwater's on the first floor of Carytown. And there's also full service bathrooms on the second floor inside of Carytown. So I hear you, but that's not the only option available. And I really need to underline that, if I test positive for COVID, the market will close. And I don't want to take that risk. So in order to make that not happen, I think the best choice is to reserve the bathrooms inside for vendors and staff only.
Stephanie, I wonder if, because I definitely see both, we do want to be careful, but like it's better for the public, if they are able to have that option eventually and not knowing when that could be a possibility with the Delta variant. We just have no idea when that would change. Maybe it would make sense to try to put together, like, is there a way we can come up with a plan where everyone feels a little more safe, but we're still able to open it, like having those disposable masks that you were giving out from the office earlier and only like allowing one person in of the public at a time or something. I mean, not right away, of course, because I think you'd have to think it through, but maybe some longer term option if this is going to be something that goes on for a while.
Yeah, the two things I would say for that is we still have masks available for everybody, and we continue to do that. If they want them, of course, we have them right at the window. My main concern, though, in terms of the masking, is it's an enforcement thing, and we are so short-staffed right now. We don't have the capacity to ensure people are wearing masks when using the restroom. I just can't be there every moment that someone tries to come into the building. And we have a hard enough time with vendors observing the indoor mask requirement. And again, we could potentially do that maybe in the winter when things settle down. It might be a little bit of a different situation when it's slower. But I hear you. I just think it really is we just don't have the staff to be able to do it right now. Also.
So it strikes me that the bathroom and mask compliance with the bathroom, this is actually a city parks facility issue. So is this another place where you could, especially as the city parks start slowing down a bit as it gets cooler, if this could be where you could ask the city for some help, like the amazing staff that you had last year helping out with the farmers market?
I could ask, but the biggest stumbling block there is the 10-month on, 2-month off thing. So a lot of the facilities, they might be closing in the winter, but so do a lot of their staff goes on vacation or goes on break. So they're just not around. I can reach out and inquire, but I don't know. I feel like there are better things that we could use people for than mask compliance of a bathroom when we do have other facility options within walking distance. Again, it's just hard to really explain that. Again, if I get COVID personally, market will have to close. There is no replacement me. We're very short staffed right now. The assistant manager, although she does know some of the procedures, she does not know all of them. I just feel like we would be putting ourselves in a dangerous situation for no reason. So I would rather wait until we have the new person starting in November at the very least, until we explored those options. So I hear what everyone's saying. I appreciate all the input, but I think that's sort of the best approach at this moment.
guess one other question that might come up too is with the parks relationship too, in terms of what are for other park facilities, in terms of for their public bathrooms, what are their, are we consistent with their policies, or is this divergent from their policies? I don't know, so it's a question. In
What do
terms
you
of
mean?
with, if there are other shelters or other City of Ann Arbor parks, they have bathroom facilities also. And I know that like when COVID began, they locked them all up and they closed them all just for safety in this way. And
Sure.
I haven't really paid attention recently to the City of Ann Arbor Park as to where their status is. But that might be something to check with, and also kind of figuring out, some potentially some consistency with their policy. If they are still closed, that makes an easy case here. If they're open, that's something to explore, and what are their decision-making processes for that? Because yeah, there may well be reasons there that we can lean on that may be useful for that too. So that might be worth looking into, because we are part of the parks. So working with that as a kind of a basis for our decisions.
Sure, but the key difference with our site is our office is adjacent to that facility, and we would have to share it with the public. I know that's very different than any other facility for parks, so that's also something to keep in mind. And again, if it was separate, it would be a different situation, right? It's not the same concern.
Well, like Argo Canoe Livery as an example of something that's where there's shared staff and there's also shared bathroom. I don't know where it is. I'm asking the question. I don't actually know where it is. So that would be something useful for getting that sense too, as to how that works. And the things, I hear what you're saying too about your role in making sure that you don't get COVID or come down, get positive with that. The risk is still there with sharing bathrooms with other people or just sharing air with folks. I'm wearing a mask, and that's is a primary role for reducing that, and along with vaccination, and that's good. But nothing will reduce it down to zero. It does reduce a little bit, but not a lot, with maybe a lot of cost for the market as a whole. And it's a matter of balancing those things out. So I'm trying to put that in perspective.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll explore all those options. I just feel like, for everything I said, I don't feel comfortable opening it to the public until at least we have another staff person, it's permanent staff, on site with us. Because that's the other thing, it's not just about the bathroom, right? It's like once they come into our site, there's nothing stopping them from opening the office door either, asking us a question, that's the other part of it. It's like, whereas now we can sort of maintain it by keeping the door closed. We still have people wandering in occasionally that we have to say, no, the window's over there. So again, it's not just about the bathroom. It's also about, keeping our space protected as well. And at my, and again, like my priority is staff and vendor safety. Yes, customers, that's great. But if they're not going to come to the market because they have to use a Carytown facility or have to go in the parking lot, if I had to choose between that and safety, I would choose safety. Is what I'm saying.
Are there other comments or thoughts other commissioners have? All right, well then moving on to item B, events.
Sorry, I had a little bit more update in facility.
Oh, sorry, yes, please do.
No, it's okay. Debbie actually brought the issue up about the power washing. That is something that we are already scheduling before I saw that comment, both to help pull up the tape, the one-way directional tape that we haven't been using and is sort of, too stuck for us to pull it up ourselves. So we're going to do a combination, pull up the tape and then power wash, hopefully the next couple of weeks. One of the main park ops people has been off on medical leave. He just got back this week. So a lot of the facility maintenance stuff has been, very, very slow, if not, not happening at all. So that is something that we're looking forward to as well. Once the bathroom's done too, hopefully it frees up some labor hours as well. Because there's some cracking pavement install areas. There's the power washing. There's a handicap placard down in the parking lot that's been waiting to get put back up. So those are just some other facility stuff that are just small updates. So, obviously the bathroom's all consuming, but there's other stuff that is in the pipeline as well in terms of just general maintenance to the facility. And they're also doing a walkthrough, I think in 2 weeks, in terms of like retrofitting more solar at the facility. I'm not quite sure yet until I meet with them what that's going to look like, where that would go. It's just very preliminary level conversations of, how do we increase the capacity for solar? Obviously, the market already has solar, but this would be an extension on that as well. And I think that's it for facility.
Great. All right. So then moving on to events, or if there's any comments on the final things for facilities, the other commissioners have for that too. All right. Seeing nothing, we'll move on to events then.
All right. Well, we had our first, I guess it's not really truthful to say post-pandemic, but we had our first food truck rally since before the pandemic. On September 1st, we had about 7 carts and trucks in attendance. We tried to make it very small. Again, not trying to go back to the same level. In the past, there was anywhere between 15 and 18 trucks and carts on any given day. We were trying to ease back into it. We didn't have any official musicians. We just sort of allowed the trucks to play their own music. And we just try to keep it very, very small. I think it was successful, but it's also hard to gauge, right? It's so new. It's hard to have an event that has any sort of crowd in the middle of the pandemic. So that's been interesting. We're having another one scheduled for October 6th. The first one, it was the first week of classes, so we had a lot of students in attendance, so that was good. Allowing people to know about the market that might not know about it in regular market hours, getting people down there. And for the future, we're just sort of taking it one step at a time. We're not sure what the schedule will be for next year, if we're going back to the normal food truck rallies or not. I mean, that will all have to do with where we're at in terms of everybody's health and the pandemic situation. But from what I could tell, there were a lot of people saying, "Oh, when's the next one?" This is great. And the next one, we do have 6 people signed up. There was one person that couldn't do October also. So again, I think it's a good small group and gives us kind of dipping a toe back into having events. It's our 3rd event since having to be closed. The one up in October, that is. And I also just got an inquiry today whether or not we're doing any Halloween events like face painting and stuff like that. I haven't really even given it thought at all. But that's something, in the next few weeks, we're going to be deciding and figuring out what's going to happen. The one downside of the October 6th rally, however, is that we tried to get Bloom Meadworks there, but the nonprofit that we usually work with, Perrytown District Association, was too filled in their calendar. They just did not have the time or the capacity to help us with that application. So unfortunately, we will not be able to have them. But on the flip side, if people really, really need to go to Bloom, it's just a short 4-block walk across town. So they can still access it. But again, I feel like, we've tried so many times to have them be included in many different ways. And for whatever reason, there's often roadblocks with the liquor license situation. So that's just an update on that. It's not a big deal. It's just something to know for next time. And thanks, Stephanie, for that tip of who to talk to. And that's all I have for events.
All right. So then moving on to item C, COVID-19 protocols.
All right. Well, we sort of talked a little bit about this already with the bathroom conversation. But yeah, for the foreseeable future, we're keeping the market office window for tokens going. That seems to be working really well. And with that said, we're keeping at least one hand washing sink, until we can sort of figure out what's going on with the bathrooms and what access is going to be for people. The good news, it's sort of in a stall that's not really that used. So unlike the other 2 that have already been removed, this one is not really blocking things, whereas the other two were very much in the way for one reason or another, so had to be taken out. We still have some of the mask signs up, and to your question earlier, Holly, we do not require masks in the market any longer, and that's up in line with the changes both at the county level and the state level. It's one of those things where if people are vaccinated, they do not have to wear a mask outdoors. But in the indoor space, masks are required regardless of vaccination status. There was a vendor who was vaccinated that did test positive in August. It was sort of a scary moment for all of us. Luckily, they did not, no one else that worked for that vendor tested positive. So it was sort of a fluke in that sense. But again, that's another reason sort of underscoring my concerns about bringing in the public, especially if we're not able to check their vaccination status, especially if we're going to have a conversation with them potentially about mask wearing and the volatility that goes along with that. So these are sort of reasons in which they might give a little bit of a backstory and context for my concerns about opening the bathrooms to the public. But other than that, the one way are probably not coming back unless things, drastically change. We also are no longer doing spacing in between vendor stalls at the Saturday market. We do still do it somewhat on Wednesday just because we have the space to be able to do so. But Saturday at this point, we are so full, we cannot do that at all. We've been averaging about 85 vendors on any given Saturday since probably the beginning of August, if not middle of July. And that includes, people in the parking lot. We are using some sidewalk stalls. So that's sort of where we are at with that. Yeah, I think that covers all of it. If anyone has any questions or comments.
I guess one question that came up also in Debbie's message too was about these meetings in terms of returning these to in person. I haven't checked with what the city status is for these meetings being in person versus virtual. Can you give an update on that?
Sure. Yeah, the city recommendation is that all meetings should stay virtual through December. But again, it's still up to each commission to make their own decision. But that is the recommendation we have received from the clerk's office.
Are there any other comments from other commissioners or thoughts? All right. So seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, which is the sign-in process, which is much talk has been going on for that. So.
Yes, this is the large item. So if you would like, I can share my screen with the updated draft, if that would be helpful.
That would be, yes.
Okay, let me just share that screen for you. All right. And this is the same one that I did send an attachment, so you did get this copy also. All right. So the main aspects that I changed were obviously this first portion. Before it was very specific. It was sort of like, minute by minute in terms of the stall sign-in procedure that we had before. I kept a lot of the language. I just sort of updated it to make it less time sensitive and make it more reflective of what we have been doing. And that's the other thing we need to just be specific about when we're discussing this. This is the process we've been using for 15 months. I pretty much just put language in there that reflects what we have been doing. So this is not a change really at all in terms of what we have been doing since reopening in May 2020. So did you want me to read through it, or did anyone have any questions, or how did you want to go about having this conversation about this first portion?
I guess in particular, highlighting the parts that how is it essentially it's completely rewritten from the verbiage is completely rewritten of this, or is just the comparison? It's not. It's
no. I used a lot of what was there. And I just sort of tweaked what we needed to. For example, the third paragraph, this is, very, very similar, if not exact, to what it was before. I think the only thing I added to this third paragraph is that they will pay the daily rate, because that wasn't explicitly spelled out previously. But that's not an actual change. That's just an update from what it had. And then again, this section 2 right below it, I did not change at all. And this third portion too. So this whole bottom section, I did not change. I kept it as it was. And the main thing that I did change were these first 2 pieces. So, and again, it's just reflective of what we've been doing. So I'll just read this part out, how I changed it. So the market manager will send an electronic sign-up sheet for the markets out at the start of the week. So I usually do this on Mondays, but Mondays is supposedly my day off. So I didn't want to actually put that date in there in case it had to change, right? In case I was out of town and had to do it earlier. So that's why I just said the start of the week, right? And that is the calendar week. Either Saturday, Sunday, Monday are the only days I really send it out. I think I maybe had to do it on a Tuesday, maybe one time, but obviously that's not ideal. And again, what we've been doing up to this point is there's a few ways that vendors secure their spot. One is that they sign in the spreadsheet that we send out. So I send an email. That's what I'm talking about, an electronic sign-up sheet. So what happens is the body of the email, there is the link to the Google document where they can sign in, right? And there's also, in that same email, is information for the week, announcements, updates, everything like that, right? So it's not just me sending a spreadsheet. I'm sending a lot of context that goes along with that as well. So option 1 is they can just sign in the sign-in sheet. Option 2 is that they can call us and leave a message, or call us and talk to us and let us know that they will be there for the following market day. And then the third option is that they can let us know in person at market the day before. So for example, if I'm talking to someone on Wednesday, they'll say, see you Saturday. That counts as a sign-in. One other category, I should say, there are some vendors that we know are full season vendors, like Jeff, for example. We know he's there every market day. He's just permanently signed in. So if you're wondering how that works, if there's certain people that maybe aren't having access to technology, aren't able to tell us in advance, that's how it works with some of our vendors. If we know they're going to be there every single Saturday, like for example, one of our Amish families, they'll be there every market day until they tell me that they won't be, but they don't have to go through the process of signing in because we already know that they are coming. So I take all this information and then I aggregate it into the same sign-in sheets that have been used in the past. So what that means is it's a list of everyone's name. And in the past, people, once they had arrived that day at market, they would just come in the office and check in, sign their name, say, hello, I'm here. But now, instead, I fill those out based on all the information that I've aggregated from these sources, right? If we have permanent signed in people, if I had people tell me in person, if someone called in, or if someone signed into the sign-in sheet. And again, people can also send me an email saying, I'm coming. But I sort of figured out that is similar as the call to office, but just so you can know, that is another option. And then I make the map based on that. And specifically how that works is that I have an annual list and I have a daily list. Right. As I go through the annual list, I go one by one based on seniority and I assign people spots like that. And what does that mean? Most annuals have an assigned stall. They have a specific place that they have picked, and that is where they are. There are a few annuals that don't go in their assigned stalls, but they do have a regular placement that we've discussed in advance, and that's where they go. So for people that were just concerned or confused about how this whole process works, it's still 100% based in seniority. So that's how I do it. I take the annual, I go by seniority, I put everyone onto the map. Once that's completed, I take the daily list, and then I go by seniority and I put them into the map, right? There is no jumping of the lines. I literally go, annual list, daily list. I don't overlap them. I wait until one is completed. So I just wanted to be very, very clear that this is still 100% based on seniority. And the only main difference is that people know where they will be in advance. So the second piece is what there was some concerns about in Carlene's letter in particular. And again, this can be subject to change. Again, this is just a draft. Let's remember, of course. So this was based on sort of experience of when this had happened. So say someone forgets to sign in. And again, it could be an error with the technology and they tried to sign in and just didn't come through. So I think we need to just be cognizant of there's not just one reason, right? It's different if you thought you sent the email, it shows that you sent the email, but I did not receive it. And if you like physically just did not tell me, right? Those are two things. So this was just written on an experience I had had. Whereas, for example, if somebody was an annual vendor and they had a large amount of stalls and I didn't get the message they had sent to me for whatever reason. There was one time this happened where they arrived, very early before the person that I had written down in the map in that space. So then they were able to sign up and set up where they had been for their assigned stalls. And then I had to just place somebody to somewhere else that was way, well down the seniority list from them. And again, I'm not sure. I don't think that's how it has happened in the past. I know the way that it was previously written was if you don't sign in, don't let anybody know, you just automatically go to the bottom of the list. And again, we could keep that. It just seemed to me like that was somewhat inflexible given the possibility of error happening or whatever. But again, it could be easy enough to just call in, let me know. And most people do that if there's a change of plans. So what does that mean? We can change that part. We can keep it like it was, or we can create a whole new thing for this very, very seldom occurrence when somebody does not let us know that they're coming. Because since there are so many ways that they can do it, it's usually very simple. But, when we were learning this new process, it was hard for some people that were used to what had happened before. So they maybe had forgotten, but since then, that's happened very, very seldom at all. So again, we clearly need something that addresses this in the rules. I'm not sure if this draft portion is that, or if what we had was that, or if it's a third thing. Probably it would be a third thing. I don't know if there's any questions on that, the sign-in process part, because I feel like parking is somewhat of a different piece, and we can address that in a moment. But feel free.
Do you want our comments on it now, or
yes,
do you want to wait till you go through the whole thing? Okay, so I'll just comment on the top part and not the parking right now.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, thank you for getting something together. This is great and feels good to be moving in this direction. I think that it is a really good start. My first thought when reading it was, since the part we are eliminating is getting rid of that piece that basically tells you to assign the stalls in order of seniority, just like how it would happen in the morning. You are doing that essentially behind the scenes. But given that it might not always be you doing it, we could have a new person. I would love to see like the process that you are using maybe included in the rules, just so like it's clear that it's still being done in order of seniority annuals and then the dailies. Because I think that kind of gets lost without. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
So because like you're working so hard to do it, but like the next person, who knows how they're going to do it. So if we could have it in the rules to make sure that continues,
Sure.
something that would be really good, I think.
Okay.
And then my second thought was if an annual vendor arrives without signing in advance, they will be given their permanent spot unless a vendor is already set up, that we already talked about. I do agree that that might not be the best response. Carlene, like in the past, you had mentioned it had been, you don't sign in, then you just get to pick last. My concern is that whoever gets bumped, that's not fair to them either. So writing a maybe like you suggested, like a third solution, or having it like it was before, if you just forget to sign in. And I do understand that there could be like a mistake, like the email got sent, but it got lost, and so you didn't receive it. But the likelihood of that versus the likelihood of somebody forgetting and then coming, I think it's more likely that they would forget, in which case it seems like it would be more fair to let them pick after everyone else has. But maybe that also a space where we need to invite more comments from more vendors, and since we are going to be getting hopefully more input on these, maybe that's one of the questions we're really seeking input on. And just like a little tweaky thing, in the first paragraph, the market manager will fill out the sign-in sheets for annual and daily vendors the day before market and update any cancellations on market day. And then maybe just having like the market manager will send out the final map by such and such a time.
Okay.
So we all know when it's coming. I think that was all I had right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful. And I agree that maybe it could say something like, vendors will receive the map no later than 7 p.m. or something like that. Just in the event some issue occurs, because I usually try to get it out by 5. But in the event that's not possible. But no, I think that's a good point, that it helps sort of give more room for, expectation in terms of when it would be arriving.
I wonder with that timing issue too, that came up in multiple things, is to say, instead of saying like at 7, it would be 7 or before. Same thing with if it's like will come out on Monday or before, and then it will give people at least an end point, and it doesn't put you at like at 7 p.m. it's got to happen. It could happen at 5 p.m. It could happen at 3 p.m. or it doesn't have to happen on Monday. It can happen on Sunday if that's before Monday.
Sure. That's why I said no later than. Totally.
But of the specific day, that might be just to be clarified, because that might address some of those.
Okay, definitely.
The other thing too, I wonder with this is that, so you talk about sometimes this, the lost email question, or if the wires crossed. A different way to do that might be, and you also have kind of different, some people that come all the time, some people that come some of the time, some people that come in different periods. And I wonder if it would be possible to have something, when the market days are, and that's known well, year in advance as pretty much when the markets are going to be. And so is it possible to say, here are all the vendors, here are all the days, these people are signed up as yes through all these things. And so then everyone can see that. And it's sort of shared for everyone, so that that on 4 months from now, this person, that Jeff, will be there, and that he knows that he knows that he knows that he knows that, and every other vendor also knows that everyone who else will be there when they're there. And it may be that gets updated with time, but that there will be some that are pretty straightforward, or when they're going to come. That might be, at least for, if I were a vendor, that would answer the question of, did you receive my message? Do you know I'm coming? And yes, you would that way. And also then I could, like, I know I'm going to be there for the next 4 weeks. Did you get that? Or did you just put me for the 1 week? Then that would simplify that, at least from if I were a vendor in that case. I don't know if that doesn't necessarily simplify your life.
Well, yeah. So that's why you make me remind me that I should probably show you guys what it actually looks like, what we're sending out. So there is what you're saying, like, for example, this first one, Carol Scott, she's there every Wednesday and Saturday. So it's in the notes, right? Or W marks every market, right? And then this is how I tell myself that they're done for the season. And again, everyone has access to this every week, so that they can see these things. Right. So like, for example, every Saturday, these are people that we know for a fact will be there. Every market, the amount of stalls. Right. And there's other notes too in here, but yeah, Saturdays only, for example. So I hear what you're saying, but I feel like we're sort of already doing that. But again, logistically, I feel like it would be very, very difficult to have somebody to sign up like every single day they'll be there and then have that be accurate. Right. I know there's other markets that do it, but I feel like with the sheer amount of vendors that we have, I think I don't know. It's just logistically difficult, I'll say.
Stephanie, what is also good about getting these emails, I think, is that, everyone can look at the order of seniority. And so you can see like who's above you and who's below you. I know though, as a vendor who comes every week, I don't always get the sign-in emails. And so I don't always get the list. So I guess wondering if.
Do you mean you don't read it or you don't receive it?
No, I don't receive a sign-in email for one of the days. Oh no, I do. There was another vendor who
okay.
I think
maybe
that was a fluke.
I send it to the exact same email list every day. I just basically copy and paste it into the thing. So again, there have been some email issues from certain vendors that have told me they're not getting it. But for the most part, I don't have like a separate Wednesday list or a separate Saturday list. It's like everybody gets all communication.
Yeah. I guess my question was, I do get them, but I wasn't sure if you say like knew ahead of time someone was coming every time, do they still get the sign-in list?
Yes.
As well?
Everything is sent to everybody the same all year.
Okay.
I don't change it at all in terms of the list of who it gets to. And also too, in terms of people wanting to see the seniority list, this might help. This is for annual vendors. So this is the seniority list. People have access to this. If they want to come see it, they can. I sent it out most recently because we are doing the stall move up on Saturday. So you can sort of see. So when I'm saying things like I go by seniority, that's what I mean. So I'll place Wassam, then Parker, then the Orchard, then Spar, right? I go down literally just like that. And I fill in the map 100% based on seniority. So just to give you a visual of what that actually means. Then I can go back to the other document too. Just wanted to make sure you had all the visuals that you needed, because I know for me that's helpful to see stuff. All right, so we should go back to the draft. Does anyone have any other questions, comments, concerns about this first portion, or are you ready to talk about parking?
Stephanie, I just wanted to echo the other Stephanie's comments about thanks for doing this. And you got my comments, and a lot of them were thinking about the clarification issues. That first paragraph, when you explained it to us verbally and said there's 3 options, that was much clearer to me. And I think it would be much clearer to a vendor too, to be able to look up the rules quickly to see that. So clarifying it the way you spoke it, I think would be helpful and helpful to then someday, if there is a new market manager, also like Stephanie said, it's not just about what's being done now, but thinking about it as directions for people in the future. So a lot of my comments were just trying to think through clarifying those issues. That's so anyways, that's all I really wanted to say on those. I do think, like Peter was saying, putting in times that give you some options, as you said, no later or by works, but also to let the vendors know when they should expect the emails or the map, or when they've missed a deadline, or a deadline, so that they know that then they're late and they're going to have to suffer the consequences of being late.
Sure. And also just to clarify that Google spreadsheet I showed you, when I send the email out, it says this it basically says this portion. It says it every single time I send it, like it needs to be by noon. And, again, maybe we can even put some language in here saying, this will also be restated in the sign in email or something like that. Because and there's also an explanation too on there, like how do you sign in the sign-in sheet? Because there's multiple tabs based on what day it is. So there are other clarifications that are not necessarily written specifically into the rules, but we could update it to reflect that easily.
I have a process question. Do you think it would, maybe this would just be an extra unnecessary step. So I really don't know, but I wonder if it would help clarify anything or avoid, as you said, the not very common situation of there being mixed, like cross wires. But do you think it would help at all to have some sort of confirmation, that email that went to folks saying, I got your call, yeah, I got your sign in, or I got your email, you're signed in, something that sort of confirmed that they signed in, and then they have that as, reassurance, and you are also letting them know that it's been received. And if they don't receive the confirmation, then that's something for them to follow up on. Again, I don't do this process, so I'm not suggesting that this is a major breakthrough, but I guess I do wonder if it might be an added insurance for times if things do get kind of mixed up.
For sure. And, the spreadsheet, they can see whether or not they've signed in pretty easily. And then again, for people that email me and say I'll be there, I always respond saying, thank you, see you there. And then, again, there are some vendors that they call in, they ask for a callback, that I do call them back. And a lot of people that tell me in person, I immediately write it down and I have Post-it notes telling me. So there's a lot of fail-safe things that we've put in, but I hear what you're saying in terms of just having it codified into the rules a little bit more. Because again, a lot of times where there's been somebody that got bumped, it was a very fluke situation because there was a problem with one of the vendors. I think they had some strange security on their email so that they weren't getting the emails from me. And they just had to give me basically a separate email address that worked because it happened a couple weeks in a row that they had signed in, but I did not receive it. That actually has happened. So these are things that aren't just theoreticals, they're just based on what really did happen. But again, the amount of times people got displaced based on somebody didn't tell me was maybe 1 or 2 times that I can remember. But you're right, we do need to have something in place for when that rare instance occurs that does make everybody feel as if, the same seniority procedure is being followed.
I'm, I guess, also curious too with this in terms of you speak of some people coming in via phone, some people doing it in person, some people doing it on email. I know this has kind of been a perennial issue for quite a while, and one of the challenges has always been technology access in terms of different people have different levels of comfort with having it via email or looking at a Google sheet, and others don't. I'm wondering what your experience has been with that with regard to technology access for the vendors.
That's why we have so many different options that people can use, so that there is every option on the table.
I guess I'm wondering though, in particular with like the Google Sheets, that's kind of a go-to for me too, and I'm very familiar with that. But I've also dealt with a lot of people for whom it's a very foreign environment, and so that although you may be technically sharing it, that they may not see it or they may not be able to get to it. And I'm just wondering if And that's a hypothetical. I don't know if in practice you've seen that that is an issue, or if you're aware of that as an issue or not.
Well, there's certain vendors that we already know in advance don't really do email or aren't really on their computer. So I talk to them, in person much more directly. For example, Magdalena Schwartz, she's Amish. We were talking about the sign-in process yesterday. So obviously she doesn't get the emails, but her driver does. So sometimes he does share communication with her. But again, I printed out a map for her. I explained the entire thing. So I do, make sure in person that, a lot of our folks that I know don't use technology are included and don't get lost in the shuffle per se. But it's definitely not the majority. It's, a small handful of vendors that I could sort of think of off the top of my head. Because again, how they're getting the information is through their usual email. And again, I don't know if I'm just trying to think if there's any vendors who aren't Amish that don't have an email that we have on file. There might be like 2. So again, not to say like they're checking it all the time, but they do at least have that sort of access. But again, the reason behind all of these things was so that it is as inclusive as possible, and it isn't just relying or over-reliance on a spreadsheet. And again, there's been people who've said, oh, I signed in the wrong thing, but then they learned how to do it over time. So I don't know, it's a tough question, but yes, as any place of business, there's people that are really interested in technology, other people that really aren't. And, we're just using this process in a way that includes everyone as much as possible. I don't know if that answers your question.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So in the instance that a vendor feels that they did not get the spot that they want and they wanted a different one that maybe someone lower in seniority got instead, I know ideally they would just mention it and come to you and say like, hey, next week I'd like this spot instead. But I don't know if that necessarily always happens. And I know you try your best to get them in, like, know ahead of time where they want to go and get them into the right spot. But I do think that it has happened or is possible where it could get mixed up. And I do think some people are a little reluctant, like they don't want to cause problems, and so they don't want to mention anything. And I wonder if maybe creating some sort of process or space for people to, I don't know, quarterly or yearly, like a check-in. Hey, did you get the spot you want? Were there any problems? Do you want a different spot? Do you still prefer this spot, or is there a different spot you prefer? Giving them like an opportunity to, tell you that they want something different, so they don't feel like they're causing problems or complaining, might be something that we could do or build into it. And I don't know if that's like a thing for the rules or if it's just maybe a market practice or policy. But I think it might be something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely already do that. In terms of like, if there's somebody that I can kind of tell something's off, but they maybe didn't come up with it. Like, for example, Wednesday market, Sealy, I've been having them in a spot on the main aisle because of just shifting around based on other more senior vendors taking spots that they previously wanted. Again, like they were fine, but I checked in last week, like, hey, is that spot still working for you? And they're like, it's good, but I'd rather be this other place. So then I moved them, right? So I definitely check in with people constantly in terms of, if they like their spot based on that. And again, as you said, it's an imperfect system, of course. Not everybody is able to get what they want with as many vendors as we have. But I really try to go out of my way to value people's input. And that's the thing where this gets confusing for some people, right? Because based on seniority, what does that mean in terms of what stall you're being assigned, right? Because certain people love certain spots. Other people hate those spots. So there is no objective sort of best spot for every vendor, right? It's totally subjective. So that's why when I do the sign-in sheet, there's an opportunity for people to say, hey, I want 9 or I want 11, and sometimes they'll give me 2 and 3 options. So for people that have had issues or didn't like their spots and have told me, I'll just be like, hey, give me your 3 top options. And I'll do my best to get you somewhere near that area. And again, I'm not sure if it needs to be written into the rules or not, but that is the process. That's how I normally go ahead with it. And again, sometimes I know someone's not going to like their spot, but there's nothing I can do about it because based on seniority, right, that and availability, that's all that there was. But then the next week, I'll try to get a little closer to their preferences. So it is definitely a push and pull, and there is a lot of empathy that needs to be a part of this process for people to have. But no, I agree with you. It's important to check in with people and make sure they feel like they're being included, and that they understand the process.
Is there any way, I feel like a lot of the hesitation and whatnot for this whole thing is, it was mentioned in both the letters, I believe, transparency. As far as Stephanie Willette could answer my question. I can't remember, when you were manager, did they used to do the walk around, or was it all done in the breezeway there in the office?
We would do the walk around with the annual vendors that wanted to move up, didn't want their assigned stalls. They wanted a different one. And then they would pick in order of seniority, and then the dailies would all pick in the breezeway by looking at the map, and then we would use the map as the template.
I feel like a lot of this is they felt like it was transparent because they were actually seeing it happen. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't know a lot about computers, and it would probably involve way too much computer technology with a software program or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. If there was actually physically a map of the market on the sign-in sheet, somehow, I'm just trying to help.
Sure.
I feel like maybe if there was a map of the market that fill in all the stalls that are taken for the week, and then the ones that you know about, and then I know there's not really a good way to let people pick because it's got to go by seniority, but it's just I just wanted to throw it out there. Maybe someone else has a better idea to go along with that, to grow on that or something. But I just feel like people might, that might quiet everyone down,
Sure.
make everyone happy. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that could be a good idea if I just give sort of a blank map at the beginning of the week. But again, I think there's also a lot of confusion for certain people about where they even are in the seniority. So a lot of times people might have a concern, oh, so-and-so was put ahead of me, but then it's well, no, you're actually below them in the seniority. So I think you're right, Jeff, that there's some confusion, and maybe I need to attach the move up map or the move up schematic also, so people can see the annual seniority, because the daily list I send out in the spreadsheet is the seniority list.
Okay.
But the annuals, and that's the other thing, people can see when they go to the sign-in sheet, they can see who has what number assigned to them in the annual thing. But you're right, it might help to have that visual of the actual map.
I think having the annual seniority list, the annual stall assignments, the daily seniority list, and the map all together, every single email would help. Because when we did the sign-in the office before we did it pre-COVID, those were all laid out together. And it was visual, and it was easier kind of to understand how it all fit together.
I feel like it just eased everyone's mind too to see all that. And even though the market's the same as it's been for a long time, they still, I'm just trying to help.
No, I totally agree. And I think that's important. And I just, don't know how many ways I can say it without with it actually sticking is that I am here for the best interest of everybody, right? I am trying to make everyone's place of business a positive experience. And I know that in the market, sometimes there's a toxicity there and a concern and a worry that something nefarious is going on. And I just want to dispel that right out of the gate. Because again, I'm following every seniority process when I'm assigning everything. And I know, again, me saying this over and over again isn't going to dispel people that are, hell-bent on thinking that. But again, I'm a vendor, I'm a farmer. I know what it's like to be frustrated and not get the spot you want and have to move so customers can't find you. So one of my biggest goals is not just to give people a seniority listing and have all that rules, but it's also to keep people as consistent as possible. And in the event that someone has to move from a place they're used to or something's different, I always check in with the vendor that is impacted. So I don't know. And again, I don't have the ability to sit down and talk to every single person, every market, although, I do try to check in with people from time to time. It's been especially hard recently just because we're so short-staffed and I have to spend the majority of my time running tokens. But I just wanted to throw that out there and reassure people that my best interests are the interests of everybody, right? I'm not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. I'm not trying to change seniority up. I'm not trying to pick favorites. I am not doing that at all. I'm simply working with the information given to me in terms of what people's preferences are, how many stalls they need that week. For example, Carlene, she's been having extra flowers recently. So we've been working it out so that she can have an additional stall. I mean, this is something we've discussed and figured out based on availability. And it's been working. So I just, I don't know how to articulate this better, but I just think I agree that it needs to be as transparent as possible. But I also just want to push back on the need for transparency because it seems as if it's a lack of trust thing, or it's an assumption that I'm trying to not do things based on seniority. And I just want to underline that I am. The only thing different is the delivery of the map. Right? People still get input. They still can say, hey, I want this, that, and the other thing based on availability. That has not changed. And I think, moving forward, if it will help to just give a bunch of extra attachments out when I send out the emails, that's fine. I'll do that. No problem. But I think really the message needs to be, I am on the side of the market, right? I'm not trying to, sow discord. I'm trying to have everybody have their best possible experience every day at market.
Stephanie, I feel you, girl. I know what it's like, but I think these suggestions are the more that these are written in the rules for everyone to see and the process is clear, the more, you're going to be able to stand behind, say here, look, here it is, don't have to take my word for it. It's all here. And, I think we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah. And I also think, Stephanie, in my mind, as a commissioner who's not embroiled in the politics of the daily sign up, which I understand is pretty intense. This is writing things down is about the longevity of this. It's not about you personally at all. It's about making sure that there's clarity and transparency for every market manager ever and for every vendor ever, so that there's always this consistency. And it's not just about you, it's about being really clear for everyone and continuing this beyond whoever sits in, who's ever making the assignments at any point.
Yeah, I understand that. And it's not about me at all. And that's the point. The point is I'm the facilitator of the market, right? And I take that seriously. And I'm doing, everything I can to make it continue during the pandemic. And I agree, right? That is why we are updating the rules, is for future, so that it can be clear. So it is a form of protection, right? And that's another reason why it's a little bit anxiety ridden for me, that we have been operating in this space that is outside of the way the rules are currently written. Because I think, if anything, that is what sort of sows this concern, right? Is because we're not doing things how they're currently written. And that's why, I think it would be great if we could get these rules updated sooner rather than later, so that there would be that security and there would be that feeling of doing things based on the way that they're written.
I think we're with you there. We're happy to help you get things in writing. And, I think this is the right place to do that. And so consider us your partners in getting whatever we need to get in writing so that there's clarity for everyone.
Sure. I appreciate that. Thank you.
What
So
are the
Okay.
next steps in terms of getting this sort of codified? Do we need more conversation with vendors or more input, or what do we think the next steps are?
I mean, I'll let you all maybe answer that one. What would you like to see?
Well, I think Debbie in her letter mentioned, because it is difficult for some people to join virtually, one possibility would be to create something and then do it temporarily. And then when we're able to meet in person, finalize things more, which I do like that idea. But I also think that writing something up and then sending it out and giving people another chance from the market to have input is important. Since this is the first time we've had a working draft, I think kind of continuing to send it out so others can review it and comment for at least another few meetings makes sense.
So I think that I would agree with waiting to do it in person. However, everything could be ready, put in place, closer to making it happen. Definitely. I would have to say, everyone needs a right to voice their opinion on why they feel either way about it, honestly. But I like the idea of waiting until it's in person personally. We're definitely not going to go back to the old way until then. So I just, I guess I wouldn't see any harm in waiting until we could meet in person, because this is how we're doing it currently anyway. And it seems to be working. I know some people have issues with it, but, maybe there's something else that would come along that would make it even smoother.
So Stephanie, Willette, I was trying to remember the process that we went through when we were revising things related to the issue that had come up with artisans. And what I remember is you got comments from us, and then you went back and redrafted, and then we saw another round. And then I can't remember if the document was shared with the vendors as well for comment, but I do remember there were a few rounds of editing that we went through.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how many rounds of editing, but I think there were several months, and then each time we would edit, we would resend it back out to vendors. They did have an opportunity to comment. I also think it helps with some vendors to have stuff printed if you were able to hand out harder copies to some of them if they're interested, and then reframing and bringing it back. And then finally, when we felt comfortable with it, it goes, through the city's, parks has to sign off, and then city council has to sign off, and then it becomes. So back to, Stephanie's concern, wanting something like that you would feel better if we had something in writing sooner rather than later. I think maybe even having some kind of working draft, I don't know, maybe while we're working on it, that is public, like, I mean, it's not going to be voted permanent or part of the rules, but like, this is what we're working from. Having that available to see might be able to serve until then.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And I
Did
guess
we
I would
wanna-
also
sorry, go
echo
ahead.
that for the in-person thing, I think that does seem important. I've heard that message from a lot of folks too before we do a final adoption. Just it does seem it's clearly this is an issue that I don't see because I'm not a vendor, but it is something I hear from lots of vendors, and it's always a contentious issue. And so just making sure that we've got kind of a lot of opportunity. It means democracy is slow, but it's also does bring people in on board with this, and I think it's worth taking the time and waiting till we get, give it an opportunity for really people to voice and iterate. And it will feel a little longer than might be normal, but it seems like I think that's worthwhile.
Are we ready to move on to the parking part, or is there anything else?
Sure, let's do parking.
All right, so as I stated in my email, I didn't change anything in the parking with the exception of I took out the clause that said daily vendors had to wait till they were assigned before entering the lot, because obviously that doesn't make sense if they're being assigned the day before. But other than that, I kept everything as is, as it was written previously. And I know that Carlene had a lot of input in her letter and changes that she would make to the parking.
I would just say, regarding Carlene's comment in this, it is a little confusing out of context of the whole rule, the parking piece of this. But it is an opportunity to clarify it or maybe make it better, and maybe it's almost 7, but I wonder if, maybe this is something I would love to pay more attention to. I think some of her comments, did help clarify some things and make sense, but I don't know if we have time to sort through it all right now. I wonder if maybe this could be like a topic on next month's agenda, unless people really want to talk about it now. I don't know.
I guess I was just curious of like how it isn't in context, because the way that I read it was that it's actually pretty in line with what we have still been doing, especially in terms of, assigning spaces if there's vacancies, if somebody needs a parking spot, that's how I've sort of been doing it. The dispute resolution part, I think it doesn't necessarily make sense. The way that the edit had been written, at least in my viewpoint, because it really takes the teeth out of being able to, I'm talking about point D right now. In my view, it really takes the teeth out of having any enforcement capabilities in the moment, by, sort of just automatically deferring to a more bureaucratic process of dispute resolution. So I guess I'm just curious, like what pieces need to be changed or what you thought about that, because again, I was just going by what it had said, and
Yeah.
it seemed like it still kind of fit with what we've been doing.
Yeah, I think what her comment kind of helped clarify was, I think earlier somewhere else in the rules, each stall having that parking space that is adjacent to it or attached to that stall going with that particular vendor for the day. So like if you're a daily and you get number 12, you get the parking space that goes with number 12. And then if they don't want to use that space for the day, then it can be reassigned
Okay, because I read that differently. I read that as if, like, for example, if you're a annual that had 3 stalls, but you only wanted 2 of them, that you would have to remake that decision every day. Instead of just saying, like, I'm only paying for 2, I'm only expecting to have 2, so therefore, the third is always open. Because if there's something that we know, you and I both know, parking is a very difficult thing to pull off at the market, right? Because we have way more vendors wanting to park than we have spaces. So my main concern is if we were to put something in there about, you have to have the parking spot behind your stall, it's going to make it, much more difficult to fit everybody, because we already.
No, I'm not. No, I
that's,
wasn't.
that's how I read what she wrote.
Oh, okay. No, I think that I think where the confusion is that you automatically can have the parking space behind that stall if you want it, if you get the stall for that day. Right. Like they go together.
But I just worry that for people with like 3 and 4 stalls, it's going to, that don't necessarily even need to utilize them. They could just say, oh, well, I want this one behind me. And they're not filling it with anything. And not realizing like that they then have to pay for it. Because I've had some questions about that too, whereas people saying, oh, well, I only have 1 vehicle, but they're also taking up the second stall with a bunch of their inventory and not realizing that they actually have to pay for that one too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's the other thing I worry about. If we start to say this thing of like, it has to be behind, do people also understand that they're then required, to pay for that? Or like, how would that work? I guess. And I'm really not really thinking about one-off stalls. I mean, that makes sense if it's just a single. But if it's 2 or 3 stalls together, I think it becomes more complicated.
Right. But they have to, like you said, they have to pay for it if they're using it, no matter how they're using it.
But I just worry that it's dead space that we could actually have someone park in that has paid for parking. Because the situation that's currently going on is that there's people that have paid for parking annually that sometimes don't get a spot. So I just worry that if we have this thing written in saying that like you can have all the stalls behind you, it just seems to me like it's going to make parking that much more tight, which is my worry.
Right. Yeah, parking is really hard.
Yes.
I do understand that. Which is why I was wondering if maybe parking itself could be.
Yeah. We should table it till next
week. We
week.
revisit.
Yes. Does anyone have any input whether or not we should table this parking conversation till next time, or what do you think? Because it is 7:05 right now.
Yeah, I think it sounds complicated enough to merit our full and fresh attention, and we're probably not there right now.
And also, it might make sense too to solicit, and if we found for the next meeting, if we do that, bounce it off the vendors too, to see if we can drum up a little bit more suggestion or more input too. It seems like that would be an opportunity to roll that in too. That would be valuable. We've heard from some folks, but there may well be more, and kind of that it's an opportunity to iterate.
Let's see.
All right. So any other comment on parking? So that sounds like the plan is to table that one, do a little bit more research, come back next month for the parking issue with that.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, any other comments before we move on?
Stephanie, when you send out the revised sections for the procedures, I had to dig around to find my old rules manual, and so if you could just, when you send us an email, send us the market rule book, operation manual, whatever it's called, then I can see where the new pieces fit in.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item H, new business. Does anyone have any new business?
I don't.
No. All right. Item J, second public comment, not limited to agenda items. Is there any public comment?
Let me see. Is there any member of the public that would like to chime in? See, we've got one call in on our participant list. I'm not seeing any hands. So I'm going to take that as a no.
All right. Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to item L, adjournment. So at 7:08 p.m., it adjourns the City of Ann Arbor Farmers Market meeting. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good. Have a good.